I consider myself a rational, grounded woman, one who embraces science over superstition. At least I did, before I had this unexplainable encounter. This event took place in Florida in 2012. I was 22 at the time and fresh out of college with a bachelor's degree in elementary education. I had just landed my first job, which was teaching third graders at a primary school in the suburbs. I rented a small house and got settled in. I was single at the time, so I didn't need much. The house was affordable, the neighbors were friendly, and it had a spare room that I converted into a cozy home office. My first year of teaching started off as well as could be expected. I was nervous for the first few weeks, but once I got into the routine, the time flew by. By early October, I had a firm grasp on the coursework and turned my attention to monitoring student progress. One of my students, a bright-eyed, eager girl named Jenny, was falling behind on her assignments. I often noticed her staring out the window or distracting other students by talking during class. I discussed these issues with her guardians, and starting the very next day, she diligently began spending lunch recess in the classroom so she could focus on her missing work with minimal distractions. The window was still an issue for her, but it was her talking that really stood out. I ignored it the first few times, but I eventually decided to discuss it with her. I told her she needed to focus on her work, and she apologized for talking. I then asked her who she was talking to. What she said caught me off guard. She told me she was talking to the man from the lake. She explained that she sometimes talked to people that only she could see, but usually she talked to her dog that died a year ago. I laughed it off and told her to focus on her work, but something about her earnestness made me think she actually believed she was talking to somebody. I kept watching her, and she nonchalantly split her focus between her assignment and her imaginary friend. I was suddenly concerned that she might have underlying psychological issues, which were causing her attention problems. A few nights later, I was up way too late, engrossed in the latest novel by my favorite author. As I finished a chapter, I forced myself to put down the book and go to bed. As I pulled the blankets over me, I began my nightly routine of going over my plans for the next day of teaching. I made it to language arts when I heard an unexpected sound, like a bark from a dog, and it sounded like it came from the hallway leading to my bedroom. I sat up in bed and listened. I suddenly feared I left open my front door and a stray dog had wandered into my house. I knew it was an irrational thought, but it was the sort of thing that would drive me crazy until I double-checked to make sure. I put my robe on and walked to the front door. I then glanced down the hallway toward the office. There was nothing there. I chalked it all up to me being really tired and went back to my room. As I did, I thought about my neighbors. Neither of them owned a dog, but it was possible they were dog sitting, or maybe they decided to get a puppy. Or maybe it was all my imagination. I climbed back into bed and started to doze off again. That's when I heard an even louder bark. I wasn't sure what to do. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but that second bark was too fresh in my mind to shake off. And then there were creaky sounds, like footsteps on the wooden floor. I looked around the room, trying to pinpoint where they were coming from and what was making them, but all I saw were shadows. I sat there for a long time. frozen in fear, the hairs on my neck standing on end. I laid back on my pillow and listened. I stayed alert for any movement in the room. The creaking was gone. I remember thinking it was just the settling of the house. I jumped up and got out of bed, keeping an eye on the area beneath the window the entire time. I took one last look at the room, but there was nothing there, just moonlight and darkness. I spent the rest of the night in my office, wide awake with fear. The next day, Jenny excitedly came over to me and told me something surprising. She told me she knew where I lived. She explained that her dog had followed me home, played with the socks I had on my chair, and barked at a possum it saw in my yard. I was in complete shock. My mind just raced as she further described specific details about my house and bedroom. And suddenly, all I could think about was the day before, and her telling me about the man from the lake. I didn't sleep much for the next couple of weeks. I'm still a teacher to this very day, but I've never forgotten Jenny and the ghosts she sees.
Now I wonder what would have happened if she had her own dog and then that ghost dog followed her home. Do you think her dog would have sensed it? Let me know in the comments. And remember, you're never alone, even when you live by yourself and you think you are.